So, according to the legal representation for the WNBA players, it is looking like it is unlikely they are going to reach a deal for the new CBA in time by the deadline of October 31st. We got an article that broke a little bit ago from Yahoo Sports, and not really much of a surprise for anyone that has followed my thoughts on the matter. I kind of had the prediction of I thought they were going to go into extensions at that point. I think the rhetoric on both sides and the gulf of distance between the two sides has been so massive, and it has kind of leaked out subtly through people like Adam Silver what the major disconnect is. Of course, Nafisa Collier and Neka Gumake and various other players have talked about revenue sharing and getting a percentage of that revenue, which would allow future, growth to be baked into the salaries. The league is firmly on the side of, we had Adam Silver talking about share isn't the right word and there's so much more revenue, but, steadfastly on the other side, kind of refusing to open the books. And the WNBA players have no, provisions to be able to audit them. So you're pretty much just asking them to trust you. And why would we ever do that? Like if you were a player. So I think the issue between them is actually a really simple one. And for me, it's always come down to feeling like, as I've learned more about these things, that the NBA kind of uses the WNBA to dump bad assets on, to dump, income and revenue that they can't really, do anything with, and they write it off in the WNBA and hide it essentially. With Caitlin Clark kind of exploding the league last year and the overall kind of raising profile of everything, this can't be run like the same old WNBA it always was. Quite frankly, I think them just offering flat raises is insulting and a slap in the face. And any player that would decide to, go ahead and take that is massively undervaluing themselves, because at the end of the day, they want to make money on this league. And there are huge ownership groups scheming and plotting and trying to move heaven and earth to get into this league. They're not doing that out of the kindness of their heart. So the players need to touch some of that too, flat out. Like if your job was going through this stuff, I think you would be, hard pressed to be like, you know what? Actually, we don't really deserve any more of the money. We don't. We really haven't, put in our thing. There isn't like this generational person who's like making everything explode. They shouldn't get anything either. We should all just suffer and be mediocre. I don't think that would be the line of thinking. I think that a lockout in this case is a necessary step. It is, a thing needed and is part of the process. I don't think anybody should necessarily be afraid of a lockout or anything. I don't think the league's going to go away. It doesn't mean, hey, the league's done, is foreclosed. It's like, nah, they're at an impasse right now, and they're at an impasse for a really good reason. So until those bridges are kind of crossed, they will be in the lockout period. Luckily, it's a long off season. They still got to do different stuff like the expansion drafts. They have to do free agency. They have to do scouting for college and all that stuff. Unrivaled still has its season. So holla at me when it's a little bit closer to May and there's like a threat of games missed, which I don't think it's going to get that far. So I got the article right here. Story was from The Athletic, Ben Pickman. Basically says the WNBA and the Women's National Basketball Players Association are extremely unlikely to reach a new collective bargaining agreement by Friday's deadline, according to the players' legal union counsel. This comes from Aaron Drake, who's the senior advisor. He said, "We have worked hard to be able to say on Friday we did it. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. It takes two to tango in a dance, and it has been difficult to find a beat, find a rhythm, and find the same sense of urgency from the league, just to be frank, to get this done." They go on to say the two sides will continue to meet this week, but they remain widely divided on the wedge issue of revenue sharing and how that framework would impact player salaries. The WNBA did not respond to a request for this column Furthermore, the Players Association has remained steadfast in its demands to rework the WNBA's current system. It has proposed a salary framework tied to the WNBA business in which players' salaries are linked to a percentage of the revenue generated by the league. The WNBA, meanwhile, has proposed a revenue sharing system structure similarly to what's going on right now, in which a fixed salary cap and additional revenue sharing only if the league exceeds certain targets. So they're just trying to keep the money for themselves, put it in their pockets. They'll basically say, "Hey, we will raise the floor for you slightly, but the ceiling we are bringing that way down." Like that's kind of what this looks like. We had the two sides kind of sniping in public, as I mentioned, with the Adam Silver thing, and then their executive director Terry Jackson responding said that the league had bad math. I thought that was great, and the league's response has been to run out the clock, put lipstick on a pig, and retread a system that isn't tied to any part of the business and intentionally undervalues the players. I saw Nafisa Collier in another publication talking about Caitlin Clark making $80,000, in a season, and think about all the money that she's generated, and it doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem like it makes sense. Someone smarter than me is going to have to figure all this all out. Hopefully, they have a lot of smart people in the room and people that are willing to be collaborative partners in this thing, because it's going to take both sides to ultimately see the light. The ownership groups are going to have to look around and say, "Hey, are we going to keep trying to run this women's league just on the side, doing like this substandard approach with, when I say substandard with the refereeing, with their operation and communication with the public, with down to how they pay people." So you can talk about the revenue not being generated. That was in the past. This is a whole new day, and I'm optimistic at the end of the day that things will come to a head. But I think it might get worse before it gets better. But ultimately, I think we'll be back on the court in time next season for the WNBA season. But there's going to be major provisions, I think, needed. There may be concessions needed, like, hey, Unrivaled might have to go. Player exclusivity, because like it's funny with how Unrivaled is such an enemy, and not overseas leagues, not athletes unlimited, not any other off-season places like China or Turkey or anything. It's just Unrival's the enemy, and I think that is kind of spread to fans as well. But Unrivaled actually is leverage. Like that's what they go to the table with. The owners go to the table with the power, and the players go with the leverage. Like it's just the other side of the coin. So I think the ultimate goal for the league, they would have to raise the salaries enough to make it to where something like an Unrivaled wouldn't have to exist, or even could work in conjunction with the league, which the league already expressed that they did not want to be owners in Unrivaled. So they created this hostile relationship with Unrivaled. It could have all just been underneath one umbrella and fed into the other, because with the WNBA and the NBA, they obviously scheduled it in the summer for a reason. Why does the WNBA play on an opposite schedule of all other basketball? It's because it's underneath the NBA. They're using some of the same arenas in some cases. So it's very hard to estimate like where this all can end up. But one day, I think the WNBA will be wise to not be a summer sport eventually. Like down the line, they're going to have to keep pushing these players to end up playing more games, and it's going to end up like that. And I think by that time, the athletes will be ready for it. Like the future generations will be coming down. They're not going to be playing like in the old days. They were playing like 28 games in a season. Now they're up to 44. So for me, I think they have to get to a place of like, all right, exclusivity, and then it's going to be expansion on the other side, as far as expansion of the schedule, expansion of the calendar, and perhaps like a radical, like, rerouting of everything. But that's just kind of a out there idea I had. But anyway, what do you guys think of this whole thing? Like, basically going to go to the buzzer here on the other side. Do you see this as a good thing? Do you see this as a bad thing that they're not going to make it in time for the deadline? Let me know in the comments. Got some new videos on the channel, some music stuff. Make sure you check that out. Got the One Lifetime freestyle up there. We've also got a lot more coming to the channel in the music stuff, but we will also be covering the sports as well. So some NBA talk too. Let me know if you guys are interested in that in the comments as well. I'll holler at you guys next time. Peace. It's One Lifetime.